Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you.
You're listening to an encore presentation of Real Recovery.
Welcome to Real Recovery. Bill and George, we're so glad you joined us tonight. We have a great show planned for you, like we always try to do. It is available live or on podcast or on demand. That's the beauty of Real Recovery.
So you mean I can listen to it in the morning, the afternoon, and at night?
Exactly, George.
Doesn't matter what day it is.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
That's the nice thing about podcasting. And if you hear an episode of something that you really think a friend of yours or some family member would benefit from, that's the beauty of podcasting, is you can copy the link and text it to them, and they can listen to the program, and you will have been doing something on behalf of trying to help that person. Might start a conversation to get things started, might get them into some spiritual thinking. That's the whole point.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really a good deal. George, we got a great show tonight. Jason is going to join us. Jason is going to come on the program, tell his story, which is going to be amazing. But before that, we always like to touch on a step after we do some general banter.
Yeah.
We can skip the banter part and just
tonight,
go right to the step.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Normally I do,
Yeah.
and I didn't there. Excuse me, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity is step 2.
Can I pop in a scripture verse?
Absolutely.
Philippians 2:13, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose.
Okay, so what does
There
that
you
mean
go.
to our
Yeah.
recovery? Let's look at that. I know for me, I had a lot of starts at sobriety. Maybe after 3 months, they'd stop.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the real process for me getting sober was when I got saved. When a minister came by, that would come by after I got kicked out of school, high school, and started that fire in the house. You know, they made a big deal out of that. It was
I don't mean to laugh.
It was a bong fire, actually, during Monday Night Football. But, you know, not to minimize it, it could have killed the whole family. And then I wouldn't be on the show. But what happened was he came by and said, if you died tonight, do you think you'd go to heaven or hell? It's like, well, it doesn't require a lot of thought. I'm going straight to hell. He goes, do you want to change that? Well, I had a relationship with this guy, Billy. He didn't just show up and ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
He really loved me when I didn't love myself. I didn't even like myself. And I said, sure. And we got the Bible out, John 3. And my life changed, but my behaviors didn't right then.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, it takes a while. What do I mean by this? My recovery process started, I think, there, because I knew when I was using drugs and drinking, I wasn't doing God's will. And I could do it for like 3 months, go sober, you know, before I got any legal consequences. But then one day it has stuck, but it was a process. It doesn't always happen right away that you get sober. But I think God lays that desire on your heart, Bill, so I would venture to say my recovery started way before I got sober, with consequences, God's intervention, the cops. But there was a desire there that I'm not doing what I should. And when you don't do what you feel God wants you to do, you're not going to have any peace, not any happiness. And that's coming to believe that a power greater than yourself, Jesus, can restore you to sanity. Sanity is living in the truth, believing the truth, and believing it enough to act on it.
Mm-hmm. So you had come to faith in Christ, but you had not gotten on the other side of your addiction. So you were starting to learn about your life and your new identity in Christ, but you had not shed your old lifestyle yet.
Right. I hadn't got on the other side of a lot of things. And it's an ongoing process. But I think the recovery process starts when the Holy Spirit convicts you, and at the same time gives you the hope that this will happen and will be better.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while. And I think for people that we have on the show, they get arrested. They go to jail. They lose family members. And I think that's where the process starts.
I wouldn't disagree, George. You think of any time a person comes to faith in Christ, their life doesn't change the next day. For some, it changes a lot, but for other people, if you had a difficulty with your language may not clear up for the first 6 months you're a Christian because of old habits.
Or 10, 15 years in some cases, right?
Yeah.
You know, my asthma, I'm wheezing a little bit, but...
you have a cough button in the studio. You can hit that and cough.
I don't think I could never do that rub your head and your tummy at the same time thing, you know, like the monkey.
Yeah.
I think that's beyond me. But what was I talking about?
I don't really remember.
I don't either.
I wished I'd pay attention when you talk.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Step 2, that's really a good one. Do step 2 out there if you're listening.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Now, what happens to us is we can see it in the rearview mirror, but when we're going through it, we realize that we don't have peace when we walk outside of God's will.
Right.
And a lot of times people will go out drinking and they talk to their buddies about Jesus. I did that a couple times, and it was like, what are you doing? I didn't really know, but it was very interesting to me. And it took me a while to get sober and stay sober. I got one day at a time now. But looking back, I came to believe by God convicting me and offering me hope. And to me, what that step says is I become willing to do the next step because what I feel different, and that's turning your life over to the care of God as you understand it. And we understand it to be Jesus. But he's got to get all of your life. Your drinking, your gambling, your language. I remember when I was working at the Salvation Army, and we had some boys in from a 12-step group to give a meeting. I go, guys, it's a church. Well, you know one of the guys. And he started talking, and some foul language came out, even though there's a guy wearing a Salvation Army uniform in the front row, which should have been a hint. And talked to the administrator afterwards, and he said, you know, I bet when Jesus called Peter and his brother off the boat, their language wasn't that great either. This guy's heart's in the right place. Tell him to come back. I like that.
I do too. All right, we've got a great show coming up for you tonight. And if you have just started listening to Real Recovery, we just want to, George and I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to the program. And I hope you gain understanding, perspective, and hope. That's our goal, that you would come to know Jesus as your Lord and Savior and stop your addiction. So what are you smirking at me, George?
Just wanted to say good morning, good evening, and good night.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to bring on our special guest. You're going to hear an amazing story tonight, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're listening to an encore presentation of Real Recovery.
Welcome to the show. So glad you're with us tonight. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. George, we got a very great show planned tonight. All right, let's bring on our special guest. Jason, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet. So we always want to hear a little bit about every guest that comes on, what their childhood was like growing up, what your family life was like. Did you go to church? Did you have friends? Did you get along with your family? What was life like for you growing up?
Life was, I like to say that I kind of had the best of both worlds. I grew up, it was not the best childhood. I grew up, my parents divorced when I was about five years old. My dad was actually a refugee from Liberia. And then my mom's from Cadillac, Michigan originally. So, they divorced when I was young, about 5. So for the most part, it was very reckless. There's a lot of abuse in my family when I was young as a child growing up. And, so I think that, I guess from my point of view, it was normal, you know, so, but within the household, it was a split household, but it was pretty reckless. So.
When you say the word abuse, does that mean emotional, physical?
I would say
both?
all of it.
Okay.
I would say physical, emotional, verbal, and
Okay.
all of that entailed. Yeah, for sure.
And when you say reckless, what does that mean?
Well, I guess what I mean by reckless, there was no how do you put it? Like rules.
Okay.
You know, growing up in a divorced home, you know, every other weekend seeing my dad and then staying with my mother, it was kind of a, a no holds barred, so to say. There wasn't a sustainability of or expectation of children. I had a brother and a sister as well, and it was kind of I would say living with my mother, it was good, but, a single mother doing the best she can to raise children wasn't always around, because she did what she could to raise us and the best she could, and she did a great job, but that's just the reality of single-parent home.
So it's harder to have eyes on the kids all the time.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That might feed into the recklessness a little.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And no, obviously no disrespect to your mother or your dad.
Oh,
I'm
course,
just saying,
of course.
That's the situation.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wonder, were you going to church?
Yeah. So I grew up going to a church, and I also went to Christian school majority of my life as well. So I definitely, but the household wasn't Christian at all, but it was definitely poured into us. It was definitely part of our family. As far as my mom goes, my dad was not saved, but my mom was, and it was definitely part of our culture of growing up in a Christian home, so to say. But the home itself wasn't Christian, but the values and the morals were instilled in us as kids, for sure. So
it's always interesting, guys, because you hear it. And later on, it talks about that in the Bible. You raise them up, and they'll come around later. Even if you go away, and my guess is you did, or you wouldn't be on our show.
For sure, yeah.
I'm pretty sharp, aren't I? But I think that would lay some seed for later on, and I'm sure we'll get to that. Huh?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
So, were you involved in sports growing up?
Yeah, so I played basketball for a little bit, and going to Christian school, the schools that I went to, they didn't have like physical contact. It was more just soccer and track and basketball. So, from about, junior high school, I played ball. What was funny is I went to 2 different Christian schools. I got booted out of one, my freshman year, and then I went to another one and then played ball for them, and then got booted out of that one, and ended up, I would always go back and forth with my mom, because most of my friends, a lot of them, when I say best of both worlds, for example, I had a lot of Christian school upbringing and those morals, but then I grew up in an area that was really rough. And so I had friends in best of both worlds, and I used to always want to go to public school to play ball or to even try football and all these things. But my mom, would always say, there's no way, you're already growing up in this rough area. There's no way you're going to go to a high school in this area. So eventually I forced my own hand by getting booted out of 2 Christian schools. And then I ended up graduating from a public school. But I never played ball. I think at that point is when the rough stuff started happening, and even drug use started happening. So
it's kind of hard growing up to be a Christian guy and be cool too, isn't it? I mean, the cool kids, at least when I grew up, sorry, Billy, I just stepped on some toes. I didn't mean to. But you know what I mean. A lot of your friends growing up weren't as church involved as they are now, myself included. A lot of peer pressure. And in the sports, that's all you want to do as a kid. When did you start using, if you did?
Yeah, I think I started using when I was 16.
Okay.
And I will say, I'll just be blunt about it. Most Christian school kids that from my experiences going to Christian school were more rebellious. I think it was a lot easier to be rebellious. Growing up, it was always forced. It was that you're going to do A, B, and C, and what I've realized now that I'm grown and older, that doesn't do anything really but push away. Not saying that's for everybody, but a majority of the Christian school friends, even to this day, that I'm still friends with, that I went to Christian school with, we went down that lifestyle of addiction. Everybody went a different way, but a lot of that, when it's forced, when the hand is forced, it causes a pushback in that area. So I think I was one of those children that had a pushback because it was just shoved, rather than maybe experiential. And granted, the parents mean well. They want their
Sure.
children to grow up around it, love Jesus. It's not like an intention of, you need to. It's more of, hey, I love you. This is what I know what's best for you. But it still causes that drawback and kind of pushback to it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's interesting to me because I've never met an addict, and I'm a recovering one who liked people telling him what to do. And I think where that starts is we really don't want God telling us what to do.
Yeah.
But I do know, Bill, growing up, that looks like he's getting mad.
I'm not getting mad.
that growing up, you need to hear it. But a lot of times, from what I'm told from other people, I always got that God was loving and kind. If it's a bunch of rules and a bunch of don'ts, and don't do this and don't do that, I see it now as an adult as a lot of do's, an opportunity, a freedom from bondage.
Most definitely.
But I could see where that could be spun the other way and spin people out. But most of your friends didn't get booted from 2, did they?
I think all of us.
Really?
I think there was about.
I'm surprised we haven't met.
I mean, you also got to understand, this is a Christian school perspective. So you think of a Christian school versus a public school, right? When you compare the two, public school, probably their standard of getting kicked out is probably higher than a Christian school standard. When I look back at the reason why I got kicked out, I was a goofball. I just, I would skip class, but it was just dumb things, like we'd make a plan, for example, to meet out on bathroom break in class and go shut off random class lights. And it became a big thing. So just something of like just a total goof off, never paying attention. And I think that when I look at my other friends, that when we all got booted, it was all I was known as like the ringleader. I knew everything, but I never talked.
Okay.
So I was always the one where, Jason, we know. And I'd be like, no, I don't. But I always did. So slowly but surely, I was the last of about 5 or 6 to get booted.
Did you guys have like Team Jackets booted out of 2?
No, no.
Handshake.
Not quite.
Handshake, yeah.
So your first drug, marijuana?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I drank first, but then it led to marijuana. I never was a big drinker. How it started for me is when I played ball, right? I played ball my whole from 9th, 10th, 11th grade, but I also dated and I had this high school sweetheart all throughout those years. And then something drastic happened where it ended and she ended up being with somebody else who was one of my good friends. And all the while I was playing sports, I had friends who were using. I wasn't using yet, because I would even call them just different drug names and dope heads and all these things. I'd call them all these names, and all while I was playing sports. But eventually that damage that had happened after that breakup happened, that is when I drifted toward what my friends were doing. And eventually I got kicked off the basketball team and just started, as you said earlier, coming into that peer pressure and just doing what they were doing pretty much. So
did the drug use and hanging out with those guys, did that change for you, your sports?
Oh, yeah.
Did the priority change? Did you have different friends?
Yes, I would say that some of the friends that were on my team used as well, maybe not as drastic. I think that I had the mentality of, I went all out in sports. I dedicated so much time to it. I'm going to go all out in this area of use, and I'm going to show everybody how heavy I can do it. And so I think I had a mixture of both. There were some friends who came along eventually, but then there were some who I did lose and that I drifted toward a new group of friends as well.
How long before you started doing harder drugs and the frequency increased?
I would say maybe a year, maybe even less. I think that once the pain of a breakup, and now obviously I can look back, and I knew this way back as well, but to cover up that pain, of being rejected or that pain of abandonment, and knowing that that's what I was feeling in order to cover up that pain. So I would say maybe a year, maybe even less than that. It was pretty quick. because I think the weed was the addiction, but then it also opened a door to harder drugs, experimenting, and just being open to really anything I could get my hands on at that point. So,
how long until you think you were addicted psychologically? That we've gone from being an athlete and we're the cool kind of ringleader, fun guy, to where anytime I can use, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
How long? You know,
I would say 18. By the time I was 18 and finished high school, graduated from that public school, and I didn't even get to walk or graduate. Actually, I ended up getting my high school diploma, but by the skin of my teeth. I barely made it. But by the time I was 18, it was I had to.
Okay, but let's give credit here. He didn't get booted out of the public
Didn't get booted. No,
my story is very similar. So we got to hold on to that.
Yes.
Were you a two-time boot, George?
Just one.
Just a one-time boot.
And I feel outdone
I got
here.
one
I feel
up on you,
inadequate. Yeah, you did.
So, yeah, Jason's ahead.
It's not a good day for me here in the studio because I've been outplayed. But isn't it shocking to look back at how quickly, you're growing up, you want to be an athlete, that's what you do when you can, and in a year and a half, I'm a party guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you grow up, you lose your childhood there, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely. It's not quite like my daughter's innocence being taken away, but it's those teenage years of innocence. When you transfer that lifestyle of, hey, I'm playing ball, just being the normal guy, thinking about college and all these things, and you switch over to that side, it's like light going into darkness. It's no longer me who's involved. It's no longer me who's in control, but this is in control. So
it's almost a spin on if any man be in drugs, he's a new creation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And we need Christ to change us back to a new creation.
Yeah.
And my guess that took a while. You graduated from high school by the skin of your teeth.
By the skin of my teeth.
What happened after that?
Oh, man. I think, what happened after that is normally what happened after that. Let's see. Well, it's just a whirlwind. Well, I first got arrested at 17 for, just some friends and I think, if I remember right, we were shooting out windows with a BB gun in some big suburb. And so that was the first time. And then once I graduated, it became a lot of drunkenness and just stupidity, just being dumb, being drunk and dumb. And alcohol was never even a thing for me. My mindset was always, alcohol is going to help me prepare myself for the hard drugs so my heart doesn't explode. That was always my mindset. So after that, from about 18 to 20 was an in and out of jail constantly, never going to court, always had warrants for my arrest all the time. And by the time I was 19, I had a DWI. That was the one that really kept me under wraps with the law. 2 years probation, failing different drug tests and doing outpatient, and it just turned into this big spiel of in and out of jail for about 3-4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time for our first break. We're going to take a little step aside. We're talking to Jason. Hey, I don't know if you've downloaded the Faith Radio app. Go to your app store and check it out. I have to say, it's a beautiful app. I've got mine on my iPhone. And when you download it, you just can't believe how pretty it is. And you open it up, and it's very easy to navigate your way through it. And you can listen to Faith Radio live, or you can just check out the podcast. It doesn't matter where you go. You can download if you've got that Faith Radio app. So give it a try. And if you don't like it, it's easy just to delete it off your phone. But I'm pretty sure you'll keep it. We want to hear from you. Your story can encourage others and glorify God. Share what you love about Faith Radio by calling 877-933-2484 and leaving a message today. Fascinating story, George. I can't wait to get back to it.
It's great.
If I would skip the break, I would, but I can't. Right? That's what we're doing. Real Recovery. Bill and George, be right back.
You're listening to an encore presentation of Real Recovery.
Welcome back to Real Recovery. So glad once again that you're joining us. Hopefully during the break you were able to text the word app, that's APP, George, to 877-933-2484. It is an awesome app. That's APP. We're going to continue learning more about the path that Jason was on and what happened next. It sounds like a little in and out of jail last time we were right before we went to break, and that's not a good pattern. That doesn't always end well, does it?
No, it doesn't. I don't see anything coming good out of it.
Yeah. So, George.
Well, that's an interesting intro, Billy, and I think part of that, the way we can look at that, is things are starting to go downhill. But I always look at the Department of Corrections as the greatest evangelical tool in America. That's God's hand in there, Bill, I think, don't you?
Oh, definitely.
And it's starting. But what kind of drugs were you doing? You go from alcohol, marijuana. You went from basketball to partying.
Yeah.
Got DWI.
Yep.
But what kind of drugs were you doing?
Yep. I think the next biggest drug was cocaine. Cocaine was the next thing I was introduced to. I was also doing ecstasy, and so that was a big party drug. But cocaine was the next level up from that point to where we went after it, where it was something that it was a normal routine within our weed smoking use. The next step was always, okay, let's get some cocaine from that point.
Okay, so if I'm doing coke, how do I pay for my coke?
Well, I had a different ways of getting money. I was always known as the one in our friends group, as I was somebody that could really be good at hustling. I was really good at speaking. I was really good at speaking to different drug dealers or trying to get fronts or otherwise. On the other side of it, I was also a mooch. I never kept a job. Now, I had a couple friends that would keep jobs, and they fed my addiction. I was pretty spoiled in that area, but I was also really good at talking my way into getting what I wanted.
So were you selling some coke?
No, I never got into it. And it was really funny you even mentioned that, is that even when, while using it in that lifestyle, we had friends who did it, and I would attempt it, but I was too much of an addict. I couldn't keep my hands off of it. It was, hey, let's try it. But it never panned out because I would either snort all of it or I would smoke all of it. But I had a lot of close friends who did it, which also provided me that open door to be able to work my talking magic and let me get it.
Yeah. Doing coke for me, I'm a recovering cocaine addict, alcoholic. It was Satan taking over my body and my life. My soul died when I did coke, but when I first got high on it, it was greater than anything I'd ever experienced. Very quickly, it takes over your life. Did you notice that all of a sudden, and I could never save any cocaine.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. How did that downward spiral really take speed?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It's really interesting, George, that you even say that about cocaine. Mine was actually the kind of the opposite. Like, it was with cocaine, it was cool, but I didn't like the after effects. I didn't like my nose being just messed up. It really irritated me. As that spiraled down, I would do it. It was just something I would do. Like, hey, yeah, I'm definitely going to do it, But that's when I was introduced to crack cocaine. And that's when everything changed from that point. That's when everything became just a mess. Crack cocaine to me was similar to how you put cocaine for you. Crack cocaine was literally a demonic possession. I was a completely different person. I mean, you talk about priorities changing. You talk about your outlook. You talk about, these areas with maybe while I was smoking weed or drinking, or doing even a party drug, I could be around people, and be high as a kite and no one would know it. I was really good at masking it. But when it came to crack cocaine, that I didn't show my face. I didn't, at a young age when I first started that, it was like I had this certain group of people. It put me in situations and in places and in areas that I would never even think. It made you do. I did insane things that I would never, ever do. You'd dream of it, you'd think of it, and if you didn't have it, you'd spend at least the next 2-3 hours planning on how and figuring out how you were going to get it. It was definitely, how police say, a controlled substance. We have a controlled substance. Well, before I tried that and all the other drugs I didn't really think of them as a controlled substance. It was something that I would lie to myself. Hey, I enjoy doing this. I love it, bro. It's awesome. But once crack came, that was when I was like, man, this is what they mean by a controlled substance.
So you're gone.
Gone. Yep.
How did that unravel?
Well, that's when over time there was a two people that I was really close with that introduced me to it. And what's really funny is I actually tried crack maybe a year or two prior, but it didn't do anything to me. But this time what actually happened is a friend of mine ended up going to prison, and we found a stash of it in a friend of mine's trunk, and we tried it for the first time that night, and it was amazing. Well, even after that, I didn't use it again for maybe a year. I just moved on. But then a good friend of mine, and I got hooked on it again. And where that took me was, there was a lot of, my parents had kicked me out. Even before this, even in high school, my mother had kicked me out. My father had kicked me out. A lot of couch surfing, sleeping outside, some homelessness as well. And, but with crack, it made me, I was invisible. You didn't hear from me for months, at a time. I was actually living in a crack house for a number of different times in different places. And all around you, I mean, you can see parents with their children, with diapers hanging half off their butts, but no one thinking one thing about it. Prostitute, all these different things around you, that world of trap houses and drug dealing and street life and those things. It's a very soulless lifestyle. I mean, it's very dark.
It's death.
Yes, for sure. That's the perfect way I would put it. You're pretty much a corpse. Yeah.
How did you get out of it?
Well, what is really funny is that I think I was when I went to outpatient treatment for a while.
Where'd you go?
So I went to Twin Town, or for outpatient, I can't remember where it was. It was so long ago. I was 20. I'm 36 now. I was 20, maybe 19 or 20, but it was in Brooklyn Park somewhere. I'm sorry.
Now that's in Minnesota for our listeners, and was a good treatment center. I don't know if it's still around anymore.
Yeah, I have no idea where exactly it is. But then from that point, failing the outpatient drug tests all the time, they gave me an option. Either you do 90 days, or you go to inpatient. I did inpatient, and I did that for 28 days, and I got out and I was doing really well. But over time, it really just taught me how to be a functioning addict. So
how long did you stay sober? Do you remember?
3 months. I stayed 3 months after I got out. And when I was even in, I encountered God in a miraculous way. My life was changed. And, even this older guy in there really took me under his wing, kind of like a discipleship sort of thing. But when I got out, I didn't have that. I didn't have a community. I didn't have people around me. So it was I'd go to the people that I did know, that were still using, and I would bring my Bible and say, man, bro, you got to read this, man. Look what God's done to me, da-da-da-da. And they're like, man, that's great. It's really cool. But, so it was very easy to gradually go back to what I knew. And that's when it started with drinking. I can drink. I'll take a drink. It's no big deal. I don't have an alcohol problem.
You have a drug problem. You can drink.
Yeah, right. So, but deep down, I knew where it was going to go from that point. So.
It's very interesting. Bill and I were talking this week, and on the 3-month thing, there's a guy on our network, on the Faith Radio Network, Rick Warren, Purpose Driven Life, who I always had 3-month relapses. And a couple of years ago, I was listening to your show, Bill, and he's on after you in the afternoon. 3 months is all willpower. That's why people can go 3 months. I never knew that.
That's interesting.
You need God to get more than that. And I found that to be true. It's very interesting how this happens. Your old friends. I'm not one of these counselors that's going to say they're not your friends, but when you're around them, you want to use eventually. That happened to me.
Yeah.
My friends are dying. I'm 65. I've been sober a long time. Bill knows some of them. Guys that I didn't think had much of the problem. If you're an addict, you're an alcoholic. The people you're hanging around are a good chance they are too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you see that, but you're getting sober. They see that.
Yeah.
And some of them want it. It's interesting, Bill, how God allows somebody to stay connected with them, but not use.
Yeah.
And so you caved, you went back.
Yep.
Because you really stopped using, but you hadn't built a recovery. Fair.
Yes.
Okay.
I think what was really key even back then was realizing how important. Now I realize how important community is having community within your recovery.
Instead of community with your drug friends.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you
exactly.
got community.
Yeah,
you just got to get the right one.
100%. What ended up happening was I ended up getting a job. Long story short, I worked in the car industry for almost 15 years, and but within doing that, I learned my mindset was I'm going to show everybody how I can be an addict and still work, and still provide for myself, and I did. I remember my first year, I had rented a townhome and got a motorcycle, and I had a car, and I remember throwing a party when I first moved there. It was just this, like, I told you so. I told all of you that you can be an addict and still do well. And even within that, though, I knew that deep down, as I'm sure maybe you've experienced, is I was still empty. I knew there was something missing. Yeah.
Totally. And you got to try 24/7. You're on emergency red alert.
Yeah.
But you got to try.
Yeah.
Were you selling cars?
Yeah. No, so I worked on cars for a living. So we did, the brakes, the standard mechanic stuff, oil changes, alignments, tires. I did that for a long time. I never got deep into it because the reality of it was I couldn't stand it. And so people would say, then why have you been here for so long? And it was that, I had a job I needed to provide, for my family. And it was a mindset of, I'm just going to flourish. I had a mindset of I'm working really hard. And within that, I flourished within the company. I had a great boss and made really good money. And I grew in it, and this was my first job where I realized that God has shown me the work ethic that I am capable of, and when I work hard, what I can achieve and what I can obtain. So this was the only job really. I had jobs when I was a teenager, but I started this job when I was 21, so I had this until just recently.
It's interesting. Our recovery can start while we're still using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because God's at work. How did that fall apart?
Yeah, which fall apart?
Where you got the job, everything's good, and but you're using. How did the using fall apart on you? How did you get sober?
Well, it's interesting. So when I was sober, so I was married for a little bit, and I went through divorce about almost 4 years ago. God's really redeemed it, and we both get along great and take care of our children. And but when I first did it, I remember we were living at back then my mother-in-law's house, and I was at the bar, and I'd come back from the bar, and even her at the time didn't know that I had gotten crack, and I went to the bathroom downstairs, and I'm just packing this crack pipe. Now, leading up to this, I was crying every time I was using. My dealers and friends would say, bro, I would talk about God. I'd say, man, I just can't wait to get out of this life. And, I'm just going to be done. And they would even encourage me. They got so sick of it. And, to the point where they were really supportive. And I remember I was downstairs sitting on the toilet and I packed that pipe and I just said, God, you got to do something. And I encountered God in a way that I can't really explain. And I was on my face for 2.5 hours, and I never used again.
Wow.
Yeah, that is how I got sober. Yeah, so
I didn't see that coming.
I didn't either.
It was definitely a miracle. Yeah.
That's a pause in radio, George.
Well, it is. So when I say I think the recovery process starts for a lot of people when they're still using, you don't stay sober if you're using. But God allows things to happen that you look back in the rearview mirror and go, if that hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't. Like the intervention of law enforcement.
Yeah.
For you, what do you think that was? Somebody finding out that you were doing it, that you were ashamed and you're just not going to do it? Or what happened?
What's really interesting, if you were to talk to, like, my mother is somebody that, we're really close. And if you were to talk to people that were close to me, I was always open about my addiction. I didn't hide it. The crack, eventually over time became something I just admitted. I got tired of hiding. And, I think that exposing it, the start of admitting it, I came out of the mindset of watch, I'll show you to, you know what, I'm just going to start telling people I'm sick and tired of it. That exposure of and shining the light on my sin and the different things that I had problems with really brought that to the beginning of this is going to come to an end. But then there's this also, there's this verse in the Bible where it says his goodness will bring you to repentance. And that was something that happened to me where I saw the times I should have went to prison or been dead, or all these situations I put my life in, but that over time, all I could think about was Jesus. All I could think about was the goodness of God. And while I was moving into this lifestyle, my mindset was like, God, please, I think the last 2 years of my addiction, there wasn't a moment where every time I was using, I was crying out to God while I was using. And that's where, now it doesn't mean that I didn't have to go through the steps of community and going through staying sober and building that network, because I definitely did. But the craving, it was a miracle. It was just the next day, just never used again. Yeah.
We're going to find out exactly what happened when we come back from a break.
Good hook.
Thank you. So I don't think anyone's going anywhere right now. And they're holding their breath. Don't hold your breath.
Unless they don't like the music.
All right, you're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Ryan's on the board. We're going to take a little break. Be right back.
You're listening to an encore presentation of Real Recovery.
Great story tonight, George. Jason started off getting kicked out of a couple of schools, got using, was a goofball, then became addicted to all kinds of drugs, and then all of a sudden it was crack cocaine, and then it was more trouble. And he's been sober now for 10 years, and it's a powerful story of transformation. And every time we hear these stories, we're always curious as to what God has for you now and how you are staying sober every day. George gets up every morning and prays for the desire to be sober.
And the power to stay sober before we get out of bed. And my bed, Bob, my dog, I'm going to emphasize it's a dog, gets up. He knows we're getting up.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, if we could go back a little bit. This happened, boom, you're clean. Walk us out from how God took you from there to what you're doing now. I always love this, Bill.
Well, man, it's amazing. So when within me working, I've had the same boss for almost 12 years. He's him and I still a very close man in my life, and has always been there for my family. And he saw the drastic change. I went to work and I was telling everybody about it, and everybody couldn't believe it. Because I was the loudmouth, I was a really good leader at work and getting people to do their certain things and kind of like a shop lead in a way. And, but what happened was it turned to a place of me really preaching the gospel. I just would tell people about Jesus. And there was even a couple times with a guy I know where God performed a miracle on him. And, God broke out. And then after some years doing that, my old boss retired, took over another shop, and that gave me a offer to come work for him. I came to work for him. I was there for about 3.5, 4 years up until recently, but God broke out there and changed a lot of people's lives. There's a couple people I disciple there still to this day, and it's God really showed me that my workplace can be ministry. Even before this, I was it's called a domestic missionary for a little bit. That I also did that for a little while, but I stopped doing that after I went through what I went through with my children's mother. So stopped doing all that. But God really taught me how to walk it out, not needing a pulpit or not needing ministry, and so seeing God break out, and I think it really affected people to see that, man, this guy I knew was just this big mouth dopehead. Now he's just this guy who won't shut up about Jesus. So, yeah.
So how did your new community?
Yeah.
How How did you get into a new community?
So it's interesting. When I first was saved and came into sobriety, I had this. I went to Bible college for a little bit, but every time, even to this day, 10 years sober, 10 years walking with the Lord, when I talk about salvation and the lost and the church, I get really emotional over the body of Christ. And so a guy who's still to this day a mentor in my life, he had said, "Hey man, I don't see a lot of people act the way that you act when it comes to souls. I'm going to plug you into a community." And he plugged me into these different outreaches in the community of sharing the gospel, different ministries, and that's pretty much where it started. Was a guy who kind of mentored me and saw that in me and saw the evangelistic desire to share Jesus, and he plugged me in a community, and that's how my community grew from there.
So you spent a lot of time in the Word?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And with other believers and growing and sharing.
Yep. Yes. I also do a lot of outreach as well, and sharing the gospel. That's what I do now in my city where I live now. We do a couple outreaches a week. I get back to like where I grew up is a really rough area, so now I do an outreach once a week over there where we give out Bibles, tracts, we share the gospel, we give out water. In the wintertime, we do coffee and hot chocolate. And so that's what God is doing. And I used to always say, I'll never go back there. And God directed me and brought me back to my community. So
He's got a job for you, Bill. He doesn't just get you sober, so you're sober.
Mm-hmm. It's really exciting to hear. Did you ever fear going back into the old neighborhood? There would be some triggers in your head?
No, so not triggers at this point. No, not triggers at all. More of, man, am I going to see old people I ripped off? Am I going to see different people?
Kind of trigger.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was actually an instant when we had started this outreach that we did. We started it at the height of when everything was happening with George Floyd and COVID, and we started it in the midst of that. And where we went, I actually saw an old dealer that I knew, and I went right up to him. I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" He said, "Oh my good," looked at me and couldn't believe it was me, and and we just hugged each other, and he said, "I'm happy for you," So it just even seeing that, it was like, oh no, but it turned out to be this, wow, look at you, and I'm so happy for you, and you're finally doing what you've been ruining our high for all those years. You're finally walking it out. So yeah, it's been great.
Very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just neat. I just thinking about that.
Yeah. And tell us what you're doing now.
So now I'm a chaplain at Teen Challenge. When I applied for that position, I did not think I was going to get it. I just saw it up and I go, you know what? I'm going to send in my ministerial resume and just see what happens. And I always wanted to get out of the automotive industry, and everybody knew, man, he doesn't like it at all. So I kind of used it as a ministry thing, as I was saying earlier. But when I applied for it, I just said, God, you know what? If you do it, awesome. If you don't, it is what it is.
You didn't think you were going to get the job?
No, not
That's
at
how
all.
George felt when he applied for Real Recovery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't. So, some time went by. And what was even funny is that some time went by and I go, man, I don't think I'm going to get this, So I emailed one of the guys, and I emailed him, and he said, oh, sorry, it's taken so long. Got back to me. I had the in-person interview. Now, I remember when I went to the interview, I had my shop clothes on, and I said, well, I got to bring some extra clothes. And I emailed, I said, forgive me for my outfit. I'm going to look a little rough. And I came in with just, jeans and a long sleeve shirt, and interview went well, and I left. Then he goes, well, we'll be in contact. And I said, dang, man, that didn't sound so enthusiastic, like, man, And so then time went by, and then he reached out again, and he said, hey, would you like to do a teaching audition? And I said, I would love to. And even after that, when I left, he just brought me to the door and said, we'll call you. I'm like, dang it. I was hoping getting a different reaction.
Yeah.
And, but then long story short, he called my references, and one of the references ended up being really good, and he ended up calling me and telling me, hey, and it sounded like he wasn't going to give me the job, and he actually said, the job is yours. So yeah.
Great story, Jason. Thank you so much for sharing it with us and coming on the program today, and we're all very encouraged by what God's done in your life. It's really been great to hear.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you are stuck in an addiction or you're struggling with it, this abundant life is there for you. George and I promise that because God's word promises it.
Yep.
And you will be a transformed person. So thank you for listening tonight. George, great to be with you, as always.
Thanks. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
On the latest episode of the Wow God Stories podcast, we go to Africa.
I was raised in Sierra Leone in a community that truly lived the phrase, "It takes a village."
Until one day, the world outside Anita's village broke in.
I didn't grow up in a war zone, but I watched one unfold in the country I love.
God brought hope to her story and many others through radical provision.
God began to direct us towards Uganda, Africa.
I was born and grew up in the countryside of Ethiopia.
Nanj and I met in Kigali, Rwanda.
Discover how God showed up in the middle of war, loss, and impossible odds in Africa. Stories that'll make you say,
"Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God."
Wow, God Stories. Wherever you get your podcasts.